I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Matthew Cowsert, author of What's Next, a military veteran's guide to maximizing your MBA. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Paul. It's a pleasure.
You ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Yeah, so I think the best piece of advice is to be really clear on why you're writing your book. So that for me is know your audience, and then make sure that you're setting deadlines to kind of keep yourself on track. I know for me, like I broke it down into quarters or 13 weeks at a time. And so in the first quarter of the year, like I spent that time writing the book. And then in the second quarter, proofreading, copy editing, and book cover design was where I spent most of my time. I didn't always like get everything done from like a sub goal perspective within that 13-week period. So like, priorities shifted, but I was able to meet my overall goal for each quarter. And I just found that really helpful.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Man, Paul, I feel like it's just trying to figure out like what path is the right path. So like, do you do, the traditional publishing houses, or are you going to self-publish? So what I ended up doing was speaking to a few of my professors at the time who were published authors. They kind of walked me through their experience. It didn't sound super appealing. And for me, I was really focused on getting my book out there in front of the people that I was writing it for. So from a speed, pricing, and distribution perspective, like self-publishing made the most sense.
Yeah.
And then once I figured that out, it was really just trying to figure out like what things was I gonna outsource. And so for me, I ended up doing pretty much everything myself beyond the copy editing. I went through probably 6 or 7 different iterations before I sent it out for copy editing. But I really wanted to have someone, disinterested third party, take a look at it to make sure that formatting-wise it made sense. But as you know, like the actual publishing only takes a couple of hours. I think it was long enough for Amazon to review the text and then approve each format of the book.
So you mentioned that you had your book formatted, you outsourced that. You also had your editing outsourced as well?
So I did the formatting myself. Amazon has a built-in add-in into Word, and so I used that as a formatting, but the copy editing I did end up outsourcing, yes.
Gotcha. And let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you've used in your book launch that worked well.
Yeah, I've gotten the most traction from targeting niche publications and partners. And so for me, because I wrote this book for military veterans, like looking to go get their MBA, is like really meeting them where they're at during their transition process. And so that's like the pre-MBA admissions blogs, working with admissions consultants, and then working with the actual MBA programs. Generally try to find like whoever their veteran liaison is, and kind of like, kind of walk them through, like, here's what the book's about, like, here's the feedback that we've received. And then once you get 1 or 2 people on board, it's strikingly simple to get other people to help promote the book for you.
Nice. Now, I do want to ask you about your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Yeah, my favorite book, it's called How Will You Measure Your Life? It's written by Clay Christensen. He's a pretty well-known person within the business sphere, and he teaches up at Harvard. But the thing that I got most from the book is it's really just about like making sure that you're aligning your resources to your priorities, whether that's in business or in life. So for instance, like if you want to be a good writer, like you really need to spend time, writing and honing your craft. If you want to be a good father, a good husband, like you need to make sure that, your resources, your money, your time, like your efforts are aligned towards those types of things, because like the things that are most meaningful in life, like those things don't happen by accident. And so I just found that like I liked his way of aligning resources to priorities. yeah, I thought that was like probably the key takeaway from that book.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Yeah. So I grew up with poetry. So I'm going to give you my favorite quote from my favorite poem. And it's, "We think by feeling, what is there to know?" It's the poem's The Waking, and it's written by Theodore Roethke. It was written back in 1953. And the thing I love most about it is that for me, it reveals something fundamental about human nature. Like, we live in this world that's increasingly data-driven, but ultimately, like, humans are making decisions, and those decisions are driven by feelings. And so, I spent all of this time trying to write this book and get these different signals. But at the end of the day, like, I had to feel it in my gut and like have a level of certainty, before I was ready to publish.
I like that. Well, Matthew, thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Yeah, so the best way for people to reach me is my website, nextvets.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn or Twitter at Matthew Cowsert.
All right, Matthew. Well, thanks again for being a guest on our show today, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Hey, thanks so much for your time, Paul.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.